I wanted to touch on levels of consciousness, which, if you've ever found your center point through meditation, breath work, yoga, qigong, any form, anything that you've been doing where you've been so focused on connecting to yourself, which could also be through artwork or anything. There's it doesn't have to be anything specifically designed to get you into your center point. It could even just be sitting out in nature. But you will notice that you will feel your consciousness rising the more you center yourself and clear your energy, which then you'll notice if you're consciously aware of your thoughts, you'll notice that's where you'll really notice the difference. Because if you're in a lower level of consciousness, that's where you'll have the old patterns playing in the back of your mind with doubts and fears and insecurities. But the easiest way to get that stuff to stop is simply to get back into your center, which is why some people meditate all the time, because they're trying to find their center and learn how to maintain it. But the first time you truly find your center and really feel your level of consciousness rise, that becomes like a bookmark that you can then refer back to. And then it's just a matter of, if you find yourself in a state of consciousness that you don't want to be in, you can just change your level of consciousness by getting back into your center. And so then if you look at the artwork I'm creating at the moment, so say these are all just, each ring is a different level of consciousness. It's like tuning into different radio stations, TV stations, YouTube channels. Everything is on a different wavelength. So if you're watching this video, you're going to be either consciously or subconsciously seeking greater understanding of consciousness or external confirmation for what your perception of different states of consciousness is. My greatest advice is to understand your own consciousness, understanding why you think the things you think, say what you say, do what you do. The more you understand yourself, the more you'll understand your innate level of consciousness, which is essentially how connected you are to your higher self or directly to source. It's basically all the same thing. It's all just different states of consciousness. And for example, if you're only interacting with people who are only focused on the physical 3D in a very surface level, like if, for example, if someone thinks this is just artwork, that's a very surface level of consciousness. Whereas the higher level of consciousness you attain, you see things from a wider and wider perspective, which is why I very much enjoy painting sacred geometry, because it's the same base pattern, but they always look different. Like this one looks completely different than what this is going to look like, and this one just so many of them, they all look so different, but they also feel different. And when you start to understand your thoughts, your emotions, physical sensations, you begin to realize that everything is energy, and that everything energetic has different vibrations and frequencies. So every, like this color that I'm painting has so many different colors mixed into it to create this color, from the people who made the color, but also myself. Like, I've mixed multiple different colors in this batch of paint, and they're all, I don't paint by the color, I paint by the feel. So I just go by what energetically feels good. But then also at the same time, all of the time I spend thinking about this, looking at this, touching this, it's embedding bits of my energy into it, which is something that I learnt a while ago, that I could intentionally pull in different frequencies and embed it into the artwork. So you've got your physical and non-physical energies. So say something like a crystal, like say quartz crystal or tiger's eye, for example, they are a very specific frequency, but then there's non-physical frequencies that are completely different. And then there's also frequencies in between frequencies. So there is an unlimited amount of frequencies that we can bring into the from the non-physical into the physical, and they all serve completely different purposes. So you can energetically imprint, it's something I've learned to do as well, is energetically imprinting conscious blueprints. And then when people feel the energy of the creation, they will then, and it always has to go through the heart. So because that is how a lot of things get communicated energetically, is, I mean, the heart is one of the biggest center points, so in our energy. And so for me, something I learned was I outgrew chakras, because I realized that it was a program. So I deleted that program, and I only maintain my energy field as a whole, because I learnt when I was still running the chakra program that I was focused on too many single variations instead of treating my energy body as a whole. So if I clear my entire energy body, it clears the whole thing. And if I align with the different energy bodies, like we've got an emotional body, we've got our etheric body, there's many different bodies which are energy bodies. The more you align them, the more of the nuances we don't need to focus on, because essentially we're not looking at a big enough picture. And the more you stay in alignment within yourself, the more your energy will stay in alignment with your higher self. And it's when we, for those who listen to Abraham Hicks, they talk about pinching yourself off. When you ignore those intuitive hunches, like, don't go and do that, don't connect to that person. It's always, when I talk to people, I often describe it as it's almost a uncomfortable, prickly feeling, but it's in your soul, you'll feel it. Like, it won't be, because there's a very big difference between emotional pain, where it's triggering a pattern. then there's the inner guidance of it just doesn't quite feel aligned. Like it, if you feel like you're having to force it, then that is pushing through resistance, and it will always come. It's always a life lesson and a cycle repeating to be acknowledged, because it's not naturally flowing and aligning. So like if you were wanting to see a particular person and it was just never aligning, like there was always something getting in the way, that's highlighting where it's not in alignment. It's not in both people's great interest. It could be a dysfunctional connection that one or both people have outgrown, and they're on different trajectories, on different timelines, that it no longer serves. It's just creating conflict and chaos and drama, and is lowering your level of consciousness. So it's the same as if you go and watch the news and you're consuming something that, or even a lot of the new age stuff now, where they're putting out fear-mongering campaigns about things in the future. If you're allowing people to tell you things about what's going to happen in the future, with when they talk about the collective, they're talking about the collective unconscious, and they're also projecting, especially some of the people who channel things, they're channeling, even if they're channeling their higher self, they're channeling it through their distorted trauma perception. So if they're in a state of fear, whatever information they're getting come through is going to come through with their perception of fear, instead of understanding that information that was coming through to them was actually to get them to see the trajectory of their own timeline, of their own reality. It's not actually for anybody else. It's for them to clean up their vibration and get themselves back into alignment. So that's a really good way to identify someone who is completely unconscious and projecting, is they're going to tell you all of these fear-based things that are going to happen in the future. I've had experiences where I was shown the trajectory somebody was on, and I brought their attention to their current behaviors, to change their current behaviors, so that then they would avoid going down certain paths. But we've all got free will, that people could choose to go down those paths, which if I ever share that information to someone, I would always share, this is the trajectory of the timeline you're currently on. If you make these choices to change your current trajectory, it's irrelevant. Whereas the people who are putting out the fear-mongering campaigns of, all of this bad stuff's coming and it's going to happen, they're just perpetuating the same history repeating itself, because they're refusing to learn and grow and connect to their higher selves. So my advice is, pay attention to how you feel when you listen to that stuff. And if it doesn't feel good, like if it really doesn't just really deeply resonate in your soul, just avoid it. It's no different. Yeah. It's no different than going back into old patterns and programs that you've already outgrown. Because as soon as you get away from it, like if you're consuming the new age or the news stuff where they're telling you stuff about the future is never set in stone. It's only what we align with is what we manifest to experience in our experience. So make sure if you're getting advice from someone, they're actually helping you to change into a better experience that you do actually want to experience, instead of from unconscious people getting you to manifest the experiences that you don't want. Which is why I share about patterns and cycles and consciousness, and all of the things that I share is to help people to understand they can change the trajectory of their own life at any point. And if anyone ever wanted me to read their current timelines, and I can easily tell you where the trajectory of the cycles and patterns you have active in your energy field. I can very easily identify and tell you that, and I can also tell you what changes you need to make within yourself, both internally and externally, to then avoid that and create a different outcome. So if that's something anyone's ever interested in, don't hesitate to reach out. But my biggest thing is always the best thing to do is always get into alignment, and things will always make sense. But sometimes people I do understand, because I needed some external guidance before to really help me to get back into alignment with myself and find my center and maintain that. But it's the best thing to do is find your center and learn how to maintain it, and only get help to maintain that, because no one can do the work for you, which is something that I learned the hard way, was wanting people to do the work for me. But I realized that everything has to come from within. If you look at the words like self-discipline or self-love or self-appreciation, any of the self-care, it's all about the self. So it's all about within. So the more you can interact with people who get you to go into your center to help you help yourself, are the ones that are going to help you to raise your level of consciousness and maintain it. Whereas the ones that only want to talk about what's currently happening already in the physical, you're just perpetuating the same cycles of the past, instead of consciously creating the future that you want to create for yourself. So the biggest thing is being mindful of who and what you interact with, because everything at the end of the day is energy. So the biggest mistake everybody makes, I've made it so much myself in the past, is ignoring what we feel. Like we get we'll get a feeling and we'll know something from that feeling, but we'll ignore it, and then eventually realize, oh, I know what that feeling was trying to tell me and I should have listened. That's when we're getting the information from our higher self or our higher states of consciousness, but when we're in a lower state of consciousness, we'll make up stories and excuses and ignore it, instead of going, whatever. The stories in the mind are always the patterns and the frequency. So it's like, all you have to do is change the station. So like if you're focused on someone who hurt you in the past, focus your attention onto what you learned from the experience for the opposite, to then have a greater experience. Like a good example is when I broke my hand. What I learned from that was, I was saying that I was very strong with the intention that the hand was going to heal very rapidly within a couple of weeks. But what I learned now, well, since then, is that had I said this is going to heal rapidly, I wouldn't have had that blockage. And it was because when I said it was going to take a couple of weeks, it took a couple of weeks, but I could have allowed myself to have a better experience. But it wasn't until I reached a higher state of consciousness that I saw and understood that, oh wow, I could have had an even greater experience if I had allowed myself to, by not having limiting beliefs in the way. Essentially, it could have healed overnight or instantaneously had I allowed myself to reach a high enough state of consciousness and just believe that it would heal, and all I had to do was let it go. Because from my experience in the past, I held on to a lot of things, health issues, disease, and all of the things. I was you know, when you really listen to the words that you use and think, you start to realize that we fight for our own limitations. So the higher state of consciousness you can get, the wider perception you can perceive, the more you can allow yourself to have greater and greater experiences. So I hope that helps someone, and have an incredible day. And I've got links in the description as well for contact details and my artwork, where I have my artwork advertised. So if that's something that interests you, please feel free to check it out. And I'll be back later. Thank you. Bye.